David, thanks for joining today. If you could just tell us a little bit about your role.
Yeah, for sure. So hi, my name's David. You can call me Dave if you prefer. So I'm the head of creative operations at LoopMe. I've not been with the company too long. I started Halloween last year, good omen. And my role kind of overshadows a lot of the kind of obviously the creative side of things and the building, but also more of the kind of process and sort of future innovation from a creative side of things. So still like kind of making new products and making sure that we're always trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Nice. And before joining LoopMe, I know you've been in the creative space for quite a while now, I think about a decade. Could you tell us a little bit about that journey, both career-wise and even before starting a career in creative, kind of what got you interested in the creative side of things?
Sure. So I think ever since a little kid, I've always wanted to be a bit of a storyteller. If you sort of think of it about like your kind of like stats, I always think that like charisma was like maxed out and the rest of it was just get rid of it. So I've always enjoyed storytelling, and I think at the visual side of things, specifically, I think what hooked me was like movie posters and like CD artworks and stuff like that. I used to spend so much time in like record stores, I'm old record stores, CD stores and stuff like that, like kind of just flicking through, and I didn't really care too much about the actual music. It was more just about like, you know, picking out like kind of cool CDs and stuff like that. So I think I kind of from there learned about the old adage of a picture tells 1,000 words, and that's what really kind of drew me towards this kind of creative lifestyle. And I think advertising was really just a kind of byproduct from that. I definitely saw myself as a youngster kind of making movie posters and all that sort of stuff, but I'm kind of glad that I haven't gone down that path, because I think that the creative side of advertising really kind of opens up a few more opportunities and really allows you to experience different things day to day. You know, you get the same sort of clients with the comfort framework of, you know, whether you're working in digital or print or whatever. Generally, you're working towards a square. But within that framework, you kind of have like boundless possibilities. So that's really what's kept me kind of in advertising rather than sort of trying to diversify too much.
Nice. Your story actually is something off script a little bit, but do you remember from those early days in the record store or movie posters, do you remember one early album cover, early poster that really got you interested in the art, stuck with you?
A very good question. Not necessarily not specifically answering the question, but I remember applying for university, and they were like, "We want to see a portfolio," and I was like, I've not got anything. So what I did was I took like a ton of obviously like tutorials and stuff like that. YouTube was just starting in its kind of infancy really. And I remember finding like this is how you create movie posters from scratch, and kind of gathering all of these like stock imagery and using these very specific fonts, and this is how you lay it out. And I enjoyed that so much. I remember one specifically, I can't remember what I called it, but it was to do with like a World War II plane crash. And I used like a shot that I'd taken on my like camera of this like jetty that went out to water, and I like found this picture of this. It looked horrendous, but like it stuck in my mind quite well of like that's kind of a turning point of where I was like, I'm actually not too bad at this.
Nice. So you joined LoopMe at the end of 2023, Halloween. Can you tell us a little bit about your goals coming into the organization, like really what got you interested in the job, and then on the creative side of the business, what you're trying to achieve?
Sure. So from the transition was a difficult one. Some of my kind of previous experience was very like luxury driven, premium clients, that sort of thing, still within the kind of realm of mobile advertising and digital advertising, but was far more quite strict, as I'm sure you can imagine. Like the luxury side of things are very like, this is how we want it. And because of that, like the creative at my previous company was very like, that's the USP, like that is the product. Coming to LoopMe, the offering is a far more well-rounded product. Like there's lots of different moving components, and so creative is like a puzzle piece of a larger product, which is great. But it just means that we are not necessarily the rock stars that I'm used to. You know, it's a tough pill to swallow.
Sure.
But to be honest with you, it's been fantastic. Like that has allowed me to take a lot of the things that I've learned and really kind of apply them in a place where the creative is quite in its infancy, and has allowed then me to kind of go, right, this is what we need to do. This is how we really start to kind of inject some life into this team. And we've got a ton of talent. Like they are really, really, really powerful creatives. So it's kind of, it was on me to harness that and go, right, like this is how we really need to do it. However, because I joined in Q4, that was a bit of a rough start as well, because it's sort of all hands on deck, pen to paper kind of thing. And again, that just made that transition a little bit more difficult. But off the back of that, it allowed me to kind of really go, like, get my hands dirty, really sort of see, like, these are some of the problems that we're facing immediately. This is some of the long-term stuff that we're going to face. So coming into then 2024, I was like, right, we have a plan, rather than kind of being the new guy that comes in and changes everything. I had 2.5 months to go. These are all the reasons that we're kind of screwing up a little bit. And off the back of that, this year we've started kind of putting together this creative playbook, which obviously I've talked to you a little bit about offline. And we're doing this kind of cool new thing with CTV, allowing brands to really kind of engage with some of their audiences with some of the products that we're kind of pairing it with, that not only allow them to kind of show off all of their fancy video, but it really does allow them to kind of harness our product to kind of measure the impact that their brand outcomes is having.
Amazing. Another thing, just at the beginning of that, you mentioned sort of the full offering that LoopMe has. Could you talk a little bit about what that looks like aside from just the creative?
Yeah, sure. So it's from the side of the business that I have an impact on, because there's actually quite a few different facets to LoopMe. But the side of the business I have an impact on is called Purchase Loop. And the idea behind it is that much like many of the companies out there that will remain unnamed, the dark side of some of our competitors, but we're all kind of chasing that same dollar, which is like mobile advertising, putting ads in front of people. And LoopMe's kind of key take on that is all AI driven. So it's mostly about getting real-time responses from surveys that we put in front of people that are always tailored by the brand. So, a brand might come along and say, do you own pets, for example? And you have, yes or no. And then, you get the option to answer a few more questions, whether it's about you personally or some of the other things that the brand might want to push. And then from there, we can go, right, these kind of people are looking at pet insurance, and we can sort of make an audience from there, and it allows us to sort of target and get hyper-specific creative tailored for a specific type of person or a market or a group of people that are actually looking for a solution in their life. They're looking for pet insurance, they own a pet, their pet is sick or whatever it might be. So it's I know that advertising can sometimes have a little bit of a sort of shady side to it, but I quite like to think that we are providing a solution to clients, but it's also it's net positive for people as well. The ads are going to be served. You've said that you're looking for pet insurance. Here are some options for that. So it's a positive spin on it, which I quite enjoy.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And this is, again, sort of off script, but I'm sure from a creative perspective, if you know that your creatives are going to be very hyper-personalized or go to an audience that's very interested in what you're looking for, it gives you a bit more creative freedom to focus in on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've started to kind of focus some of our creatives in I guess industry-wise you'd call it A/B testing, but rather than A/B testing, it is sort of like kind of more leaning towards that DCO side of things. So we know that there will be an audience segment that is this particular age category, or have this particular interest, or whatever it may be. So then we can sort of change some of the messaging, maybe change some of the way that the creative is animated, that sort of thing. And Celtra is a great enablement of that. The tools that it has really do allow it to allow us to be quite versatile in that, which, as far as I'm aware, a lot of the kind of competitors that you guys have in the market, it's not the same sort of offering. There are obviously some dynamic options, but I really do think that Celtra enables us to get that creativity just right.
Amazing. So on the Celtra piece, you've been a user for many years. I think, how many years exactly have you been using Celtra?
It's just under a decade. I would say about 9, give or
Okay.
take. Give or take.
I think that beats a lot of people at Celtra, including myself. So you can definitely give us more feedback. But how important, as you're sort of developing these plans at the end of Q4, especially, and you've kind of seen how the team is using Celtra, how the team is using creative generally. You said you identified a few of the issues as well, and you've really come into Q1 of this year with a plan. How important has Celtra been in determining that plan, and now that you're starting to implement it?
Sure. So it's a key part to our business. And I think coming into the business, I was quite, not necessarily nervous, but there was this concern that was like, how much they use Celtra, how much don't they use Celtra? Because I know that, not all of it was going to be creative focused, as I've mentioned. But it's kind of a great tool for us because we've been able to go, right, I've come in, I've spent 2.5 months right at the beginning building stuff, getting my hands dirty. And so I've built trust with the team that I've not just come in and gone like, oh, this is how we're going to do it. Like sort of that expectation of a new creative director or a new manager or whatever. I've come in and gone, right, why are we building it this way? Or this is so much more efficient. So kind of Celtra has been a key part of my growth and my success and really allowed me to find a niche, maybe is probably a good way of describing it. And then, come into companies like LoopMe and go, right, what you're doing is great. This is how we can make it better. And that's really allowed me to sort of have that step up from a personal side of things, as we've mentioned, kind of it's helped my career. But, off the back of that, it allows LoopMe to really, really skyrocket some of their creative enablement.
Amazing. And how has the team's response been so far? You said you built that trust initially.
Yeah.
So that's a great first step, I think. And now that you're actually starting to make some changes, how's the team responding?
Yeah, I mean, not just the team, but the whole company really has really had some positive feedback. So it kind of comes from team morale, efficiency in the builds, allowing us to like kind of really create a full suite of products rather than sort of being too reactive. We're now quite almost proactive in kind of going like, these are some of the things that we offer. If you're giving us just a couple of JPEGs and some video, yeah, we can slot that together for you. But if you're spending a little bit more, or if you're a more long-time client, we can create something a bit more bespoke. So it's allowed us to kind of really get more opportunities and more positivity from as simple as your regular designer, but all the way up through like the sales enablement and, as I say, revenue opportunities and things like that to effectively help grow the company. So it's having a really positive impact.
Just on that piece, if you don't mind, I think this is something we hear about a lot of companies trying to make more of an ad product suite that they can, again, go to market with instead of being more reactive, be more proactive. Could you talk a little bit about the different teams you've had to influence or enable in order to get that in place?
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Celtra obviously has a great templating like product, like the Creative Wizard. And actually, quite early on in my career, I was quite anti this naively. So I was like, no, everything should be bespoke, everything should be custom. But realistically, 70% of what you do maybe is your bread and butter. Like that is your day-to-day stuff. So why build it from scratch every time? It just doesn't make any sense. So what it's enabled us is, as I say, that kind of 65, 70% of our day-to-day is going to be regular ads. Like it's not going to be tentpole, it's not going to be groundbreaking, it's going to be the kind of ads that perform well, are easy to produce. So we've had like kind of some creative brainstorming sessions around that with the team, and there's been quite a bit of back and forth, but then it has an impact on quite a lot of the other teams in the company. You've got marketing that want to talk about all of this new stuff, you've got sales going like, hey, what is it that we're selling now? You've got some of the planning teams that want to put the decks together, and there's going to be fancy names. Obviously, it has to be fancy names. So kind of even some of the kind of micro processes within these, like it changes some of the way that the tracking's done. So it really has a big impact on the larger company. And as I say, we've seen a huge uptick in efficiency, which then makes everybody happier, which just kind of keeps that ball snowballing. So it's had a great impact.
Amazing. And as you can kind of continue to refine the offering and collaborate with Celtra, what outcomes are you most excited about in the future? So it seems like you're still kind of early stage and already getting some really great feedback, efficiencies from the creative team. Long-term vision-wise, once you get the ad product suite in place, once you have everything sort of optimized as you look for it to be, what sort of outcomes are you looking for in the future?
Great question. I think pairing scalability with keeping identity is imperative, to be honest with you. Like you, as I mentioned, as you're creating like a template suite or a creative suite or whatever it is that you want to kind of call it, you need to be able to make sure that you're not just planning for that year, but you're going, okay, like in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, what is this company going to be doing? What are we projecting? How am I going to influence that? And so when you're, in ideally December, but realistically it's January, when you're doing your roadmap for the year, you shouldn't be looking at it from in December, what is my what is success, but it's actually how is that success going to influence the next few years of production, and that scalability is super important. But within that, you want to try and maintain some identity. So you don't just want to put square here, press play, job done. You want to try and give it a different lease of life. You want to try and keep the industry moving and still kind of inventing new things as you go. The industry itself is very they want to reinvent the wheel every single day. I can't tell you how many times I want to see something I've never seen before comes across my desk. But kind of within that, one of LoopMe's main values, his key values, is we innovate, and I really do strongly stand by that. I think it's something that if you do what you've done, you'll get what you've got. And so by pushing scalability and kind of watching how that allows a company to grow and allows the sort of industry to sort of bounce off of you whilst retaining that identity, I'm really excited to watch my influence and the team's influence really help drive LoopMe forward.
Amazing. And that kind of brings us back to what you were saying when you kind of first started the role and what you were thinking of getting into LoopMe. Creative wasn't sort of the rock star of the offering, right? But it sounds like you're elevating that as a bigger part of the offering.
Yeah. Trying to. It's a bit of a process. So it's part of it is about showing what you can do, not you as an individual, but what the creative can do, and the story that it can tell. Kind of going back to the storytelling in me. So it's not just about a KPI. It's not just about a budget or a deadline. It is. A client's come to us with a challenge and they want a solution. And sometimes that solution is very simple and you can chuck it in a template. But the solution sometimes might be part of a broader aspect of account management. They want that snappy, fast turnaround. They want those kind of really minute animations that otherwise you wouldn't be able to kind of tell. They want that subtlety sometimes. So I think that part is quite key in trying to keep the creativity alive and sort of pushing yourself as well as sometimes pushing on the clients.
Awesome. So really good feedback on the role at LoopMe. Would love to hear just a bit more. Again, you've been using Celtra, I think, longer than some internal users, around 9 years. So with your use of Celtra, various roles, you've seen a lot of updates on our side. What has been the most impactful update or release from our side for your day-to-day?
I would say, I'm going to go back a little bit first. I guess I think it was probably in maybe year 2 or year 3 of me using Celtra. Maybe not as late as that. But the way that we used to animate in Celtra was a little archaic. It used to be through the animate action.
Okay.
And so rather than it being plotted on a timeline, there was an event that you would put in, and then you would say, this is where I want to move it on the x-axis with a number. Same with y, and then I think there was time and rotation and speed, all the same sort of metrics that you can change at the moment, but it was just done in one line on an action. And so you couldn't see it really in real time. You couldn't plot it against other animations. So you'd have to type all the numbers in, press save, check it on your desktop, check it on your phone, and then go, no, that's not right. And then go, it was a nightmare. So the introduction of the animation timeline and scenes, whilst I think today is just an expectation. Like when I'm teaching my designers, they're like, oh, it's like After Effects. I'm like, you don't know.
You don't know the pain.
You don't know the pain we went through. But it's a huge quality of life change. And I think that it speeds up the process. It allows you to see it in real time. And you can obviously also simulate other scenes as well. So you can kind of go like at the end of last scene, I want to see the beginning of this one. So that, along with the dynamic keyframes, I think is a very simple tool, but it's a huge leap forward that they had. And then something a little bit more recent, I think the transitions component and the particles component are both game changers. I really think that image swipes from left to right is all well and good, but having those like little subtle effects, whether it's kind of one of the curtain ones or the opacity or something like that, it just breathes a little bit more life into it. And as I say, sometimes the clients really want that subtlety. They don't just want image slides left. And the particles is great. I probably use it every day.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's something, the fact that you can put custom sprites in it really allows you to get a little bit kind of crazy in some aspects. And like, whilst the weather one is obviously weather related, you can kind of warp it to how you want it to do. So we done one fairly recently that had a kind of trophy in it, because it was about winning a tournament. And so we used the sun to kind of just act as like the shine. Exactly. So you can like bend it to your will almost and really get creative with those components.
That's super interesting. I think that reminds us, even as we're kind of focused on scalability in some cases and some of our templates and things like that, it's also important to have that personal option, so you can go a little more in detail with your builds and can have that personal effect to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always going to be a request on your desk that you sort of scratch your head and you think, okay, how are we going to fit this circle in this square? But yeah, Celtra, most of the time does have a solution for it, and if it doesn't, it has the versatility to allow you to build your own solution through JS and APIs and stuff like that.
Nice. And I guess that kind of goes to the next part of the question here. From what you see in the space, or maybe some of the requests you do get from your advertisers on a daily basis, if Celtra could build anything that would make your life easier, not saying we will, but just feedback for the team, and also just a little insight into the type of questions that you get or requests you get, what would that be?
I would say we do quite a lot of like custom sliders. So if you imagine like a line with a little nodule on it that you can use to interact and influence another component. So I'm thinking specifically like a PNG sequence in the 360 component where you've got like a shoe facing you and then you can turn it and it spins the shoe. Whilst you can do that with Celtra at the moment, you don't necessarily have that kind of more obvious input. So you can touch the component and it slides, but having like a little slider bar to kind of show like, if you touch this and you move your thumb across it, it will spin the thing. We built quite a few of those and they always go down quite well, whether left to right or up and down. You can also, I guess, attach that to the panable as well. Like if you wanted to do up, down, left, and right, and all of the bits in between. But I guess that would be less of a slider and more of like an analog stick, I guess almost, like a controller. I also think that, like I've mentioned, the transition effects is wonderful. I just always crave more from it. Like there's tons and tons and tons of things you can do, and maybe I'm just trying to imagine too many options. But yeah, like things like waves and dots and ripples and stuff like that, like those kind of slightly more kind of cascading effects. I'd love to see something like that, because I don't think that it's just an extension of what we've already got. And then I think lastly, maybe something in the AR space, but I know that can be a little bit tricky, mostly just because of the file types that it requires, and essentially it's a whole different kettle of fish. But I know that iOS and Chrome have like their own model viewer like tech that's somewhat easy to like integrate. So like being able to piggyback off that and just drop a 3D model in and go, I want to see it in front of me. That would be nice, but I think that would be a cherry on the cake, really, rather than an immediate request.
Obviously, LoopMe very involved in kind of AI, and that's a big part of your offering as well as data. What are you sort of seeing either from the creative side or kind of digital advertising generally in terms of trends in the market? And this can be, what are your advertisers asking for on the creative side, or just what you see as someone who lives and works in the space?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as you say, like AI is just massive, and it's not going anywhere. It is here to stay, and I think we need to embrace it. No, it's not. I think we need to embrace it. We need to embrace it. And I think really it's about how brands start to utilize it. Everyone's a little scared at the moment. We're a little bit worried about, obviously there's a lot of compliance issues. There's a lot of not necessarily GDPR, but it's more sort of, I guess, UGC kind of issues. Like if it's user-generated stuff, kind of how does that resonate with the brand, and is it our values? And so I think once those things get a little bit more tidied up over the next, probably 2 years or so, and it becomes a bit more regulated, I really think like the generative side of AI can really start to impact advertising. I can see a perfect world where I'm interacting with a McDonald's ad, for example, and Ronald McDonald himself like pops up and he starts talking to me and I'm talking back to him in real time, and there is like a persona within him that has been kind of hard coded, and he starts talking about maybe like the charity, the Ronald McDonald Foundation or whatever it might be. Many brands have ambassadors, and so being able to create their persona and for users to interact with it like in a real time way, this again is a game changer. And I think kind of just off the back of that as well, we're seeing a lot of kind of creative generative AI have some. It's a little concerning, I guess, for like digital artists, especially people kind of coming into the space now. But I really think that it's a tool that people need to put on their belt rather than see it as like this thing's replacing me. You just jump on the horse. Like there will be roles in the future that are not necessarily current at the moment, but you'll start to see like prompt masters and people that really know how to control this thing so that its outcome is what a human could have done in a week. You can do it much quicker, much faster, much more accurate. So I really do think it's something we need to harness.
Oh, amazing. Just to wrap up then, appreciate all the time that you spent with us already today. But kind of going back to that initial creative mindset, what got you into advertising, the creative space early on, we're all about empowering creativity at Celtra. We're always trying to think about that in the work that we do. And what has been your favorite creative that you've worked on at Celtra? And why?
There's literally thousands to choose from. But I think, again, coming from a like quite luxury, quite premium environment, I had the pleasure of working with so many clients. Like whenever people always used to ask me, "Oh, what do you do?" It was quite difficult to explain. But I quite often sort of said, like the brands you see in an airport, your brands you see in a mall. Like I've worked with pretty much all of them. But there were two that I had never worked with before that I always wanted to get like as a kind of pin on my badge. And one of them was McDonald's and one of them was Coca-Cola, because they're massive names, and I just hadn't worked with them because of the situation. So coming to LoopMe, I was quite excited to sort of know that they work with these kind of these companies. And my first creative at LoopMe was for McDonald's, and it was for a like a pinball game that McDonald's wanted to put forward, and it was. It was a wild ride. It was, let me tell you, it was one of those situations where we'd sold something in and we had to make it good and quick, and it was a miracle, to be honest, that we got it through the door. But I loved every second of it because it was exactly what I wanted. Like I really wanted to kind of work with some of these like world-class brands that are a little bit more open to kind of creative license, and they want to do interesting, fun things that are pinball games for a fast food brand. It's a little wacky, but it worked great, and the performance on the campaign was through the roof too. So I think that was probably the one that's most memorable right now.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you a lot for coming by. Thank you for answering all these questions. Really good insight.
Thank you for having me.